So there's a lot of different things that you can make within Fusion. There's a lot of skill sets that you can learn. You can acquire to do different things within Fusion. And it really depends on what you're looking to do. I would recommend you to find a video on that specific thing. But if you just want to get into Fusion and you want to learn how some of the nodes work, so acquiring just a basic understanding of Fusion is probably a good thing. So what we're going to try to do here is get some footage on the timeline within DaVinci Resolve's edit page. We're then going to go into Fusion with the stuff that's on the edit page, make a couple of edits there. I'll show you how to get nodes, where to find them, how nodes connect up. And then once we have a couple of things put together, I'll show you then how to get it back onto the edit page so that you can continue your edit outside of Fusion. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Explore a wide selection of pre-made creative tools for DaVinci Resolve, like titles, transitions, slideshows and infographics, like bar charts and callouts, and much, much more. Link in the description for more information. All right, so all I've done so far is just brought in some footage, and this footage is just of a boat going down the river. And all we're going to do is just take a small portion of this. So I'm just going to cut this and just get a really small portion. You typically just want to go into Fusion with the things that you need. So you don't have a 10-minute clip that has to get processed through Fusion and then come back to the edit page when you don't really need anything. So one thing that I would recommend doing is wherever you want your elements or whatever it may be, just using that portion of your clip, right? Just cutting just that portion. Like you can see here, just that portion that you're actually going to use, we'll take that into Fusion. Having cut points will make them as individual clips. So when we go into Fusion, we'll have an in and an out point based on where our cuts are. And I'll quickly show you here. So we'll just go right into Fusion. Now, doing it this way, we're going to be applying directly onto that clip. And there's a couple of pros and cons to that. The one pro is that we can see up here is that we have the resolution of the native clip. Then when we go back to the edit page, it'll then process whatever our timeline is. The other way that you could go in and do this is if we make a Fusion clip. So if I click on one of these clips, I can go to new Fusion clip. That's then going to process through the edit page first, then go into Fusion. And there's a couple of different things that happen there. I'm going to come up here to clip so I can see my 3 clips here. As you can see, this clip was our middle clip. We didn't add the Fusion clip. As you can see over here's the Fusion clip, and we have the resolution of the native video file. If I come over to the Fusion clip, what's going to happen is it's going to have the native timeline, or it's going to have the native resolution as well as the frame rate. So if I look up here, we have the 1920 1080, which is our timeline. So it really depends on how you want to work on things, which way you want to go about bringing stuff in. Every case is a little different. Just kind of work with one until you need the other. I would say really until you get a better understanding of how the two work. So we're just going to work on this middle little clip here. Looking at our whole project here, so across the top, just like all of the other pages within DaVinci Resolve, we have the ability to turn on or off different elements. And Fusion uses a node system, and that's down here. This is referred to as a flow, but I like to say the node tree. And we just have one node leads into another. As you can see, we have this line going over that has the arrowhead going in. And as you can see, if I disconnect that, we have the gray, which is typically all nodes have the gray, which is the out of that. And then all of the nodes have some type of in. Some of them have an in that you can connect into, and some are what are referred to as generators. So they generate an image themselves, and then we'll be able to spit that out. Some also is this one. This one is, I guess, a generator-ish. It's producing a video, which is the video off of the timeline. But this has an in as well, but that one is a mask. So hovering over them, you can see it. And then also in the bottom corner, you can also see it down there, what that endpoint is. So this one is the mask. And if I come over to this one's an in, right? So we would go out of an out, obviously, to an in, and then the other node would then show up. Our viewers up here, we can have multiple types of viewers. We can have viewers that split different channels. Like if we come up here, we can get particular channels. If we want to just see one particular channel, we can do that, or we can see all the channels or alpha. There's a couple of different settings here, but mainly the views are to be able to view different parts of your Fusion project. And let's say you want to reference something, or you want to view something in a different area. And this, going through this, I'll be able to show you why you would want to see one over the other. Here across, we have a bunch of different generalized nodes. These are nodes that are commonly used depending on what you want. And there's these little dividers kind of breaking them into little groups. So the first couple are just generators that are creating something. Over here, we have a little bit of color and modifications with the blur. Then we have the ability to transform a little bit, so we can bring clips together, kind of like overlapping them. We can use an actual transform, which manipulates it. We have a couple of masks here. We have a really powerful particle system within Fusion that you also have the ability. And these are just some nodes. These are not all of them. And then over here is some of the 3D stuff. Recently, we've been able to change this, so we can come into here and we can change this. So I have this changed up with a couple of different things that I use for when I'm doing motion graphics. You can create multiples. I just wanted to show you that that exists. If we come up here to the effects library and we come into tools, these are going to be all of the tools that you have access to within Fusion. There are a couple of tools that DaVinci Resolve you can use from DaVinci Resolve and have them in Fusion. And those are down here in the open effects, the resolve effects. Those are things that are typically on the edit page or in the color page that you can also use within Fusion. So there's a bunch of nodes in there as well. So that's one way of being able to access all of your nodes. The other way is down here in the node flow. We can right click and go add tool, and here are all the tools as well, broken up into separate categories. If you know your node, you can also hold down shift and hit spacebar, which brings up this select tool, and you can type in the node. So if we want to do like a background, right, we can type in background and that will create a background node. And that's just kind of like a solid. If you're from After Effects, it's just going to be like a solid color, which then you can chop up and, you know, manipulate in a way that you want to. So what we're going to do here is we're first going to just take a couple of characters. So I'm just going to write down my name, and then we're going to put it onto the side of this boat. We're going to then track the boat so that we can get perspective shift. So as the boat's rocking, we're tracking that, and it's going to make it look like it's actually stuck to the side of the boat. So to do this, we're first going to grab a text node, and this is going to be the node of all nodes to create text, right? So in here, I'm just going to type in JRTV. We can pick some stuff here, but we can't see the actual node. So to be able to view this node, we drag it up and then we release to view it up here. And we can go in and pick whatever fonts that are installed on our system. So I'll just go in and I'll pick a font. Let's say this one here. And once we have a font picked, we can pick color, size, all of that stuff. Next, we want to get this onto the boat. So there's a couple of different ways that we could typically do this, right? I was saying this node here, the merge node, that allows us to take one element and lay it on top of the other. If I was to do that, I'll bring that in. And then we're going to go from the media in, which is this video clip here. We're going to drag this up to the background, which is the yellow here. If you ever need to know, you can just always hover over it. It says down the bottom corner. And if you sit there long enough, it'll say it right where your mouse cursor is. And then if we drag this one to there, and now we view this node because we have them both connected, but we want to view it. We view it here. Now we can see it here. So depending on what you're looking to do, this might be the perfect example for a title sequence, that you're maybe went on an adventure in a boat, right? And you could have this here, and there's a bunch of different types of animations within the text tool. I have a ton of videos on that if you're interested in learning all of the tools that aren't just right here. There's a ton of different tools that are a little hidden to the beginner, and you can take a look at that. That'll be down in the description. So if we take a look at this and we were to click on the text, we have this little widget and we can move the text around and we can see like, okay, it's on top of it, but it doesn't have the perspective like it's actually on the side of the boat. So there's a couple of different things that we can do to get it on the side of the boat. But a lot of the times when you're working within Fusion, once you start to really get into Fusion, you try to use the least amount of nodes as possible to get the result in which you want. So what I could do is I could do a perspective shift with this and skew the text element, which is just this flat element. I could skew that and get it to be on the side of the boat. And then I could do a planar transform node, which would then take a planar, it would take a bunch of nodes. So we're going to try to do it with the least amount of nodes as possible. So what we're going to use is the planar tracker node. So I'm going to hold down Shift, hit spacebar, and then just type in tracker. And here are all the different trackers. Camera tracker, I believe that that's a studio only, but you can use the normal tracker, which is going to give you X and Y. So up and down, left and right information. The planar, that's going to take into account perspective, right? Perspective. So if something turns, we're going to get that perspective shift, right? And what the camera tracker does is it tracks the whole scene and it can determine based on how things move in the scene where the camera has moved in 3D space. And then you can use that to then place objects. So while you play the clip, those objects are also shifting closer or further away. So that's what that is. And that I believe that that's a studio only, but we're not using that. We're just using the planar tracker. So once we have it selected here, we can go add and it'll add it in here. We're first going to connect in the video clip in, and then we're going to connect in the text in, right? So the video is going to be the background, and then the green is going to be the corner pin image. So now if we view this here, we're not really going to see anything. I'm actually going to come back to my text and come over into transfer layout and reset this just so we can see here. All right, and now in this planar tracker, I'm going to come into track, and then now I'm going to say the area in which I want to track. So I'm going to say I want to track just this side wall here, right? So this is what I want to track. I want to track that information there. I'm actually going to try to make, this is the information that I want to track. And there are a bunch of different track information options here. But one thing that you'll notice is we have to set this reference time. So if we hit set, it says 1:32. Now this is going back to the play head on the in Fusion. And that is going to be this little area here. Because we made the in and out point cuts, we now have in and out points, which is the yellow. And it starts at 132, which is where our playhead is. Our playhead's this orange thing. So I'll move that back to 132. And it goes to 271. So those are the frame numbers, right? Over here, it says where our playhead is. It's at 132 currently. If I was to move this, obviously we would see that number change, right? So in and out points here. And then over here is the current frame that we're viewing. So we select the frame that we want to start on, right? That reference frame that we're always going to get all of our information from and we're going to work off of. It doesn't really matter where it is. We just need to pick one because that's where we're setting this area up, right? And it's always going to look at that area as, okay, this is a starting area. Now we're going to be moving it. So now we have a bunch of different tracking settings. And this is, if you're not getting a good track, that's when you start to play with this and you kind of figure out, okay, which tracker do I like better? And then we have some track tools here. So if we will just want to track one frame, okay, we will track just one frame, or we can click this and then we can start to continuously track. So right now we're tracking, and as you can see, everything's just kind of moving around. We're tracking through here, and this will track all the way through. I'm not sure why it's kind of going so slow right now. That's kind of bizarre. Okay, I'm not entirely sure what was going on with that tracking, but I'm just going to stop it now so I can continue explaining this. But once it's done tracking, we can see all these little points here, and those are all keyframes, right, for our tracker. And as you can see, as we go through here, we have all of those little points, and then we don't have any points because that portion isn't tracked. If we want to track it, we can just put our playhead wherever we want. So like, let's say right here, right where our last track was, and we can click the button to continue tracking. So now that we have that on there, we can now flip this to corner pin. And now we have this little area right here, and we can see JRTV right there. We can move this over to our area, all right? To where we want this to be located, right like that. And now we can't really see it there, so I'm gonna go to views, and we're just gonna view the text over here. So what we can do in here is we can come back over to the text and we can increase its size. Let's view this over here. We can increase its size, right? But you don't want to cut it off, right? So once we start to go out, it's going to cut it off, and we can see over here it's cut off, right? So we want to come in and we can make it, let's say, that big, and we could bring it up to the top. There we are. Now if we view, let's close this. We view this here. I'm going to open this up just a little bit. All right, so to me, that looks like it's on there. And now if I play this through, what we can see is that it's sticking right where it was that whole time. So if I play this, it's sticking right to it, right? It's looking real good. But then remember, halfway through here, we start to lose the track information. So we'll see what happens right after the track information. Now it's sliding all over the place, right? So that's where the track information comes in, and we really want it to start to look good. So I don't want to go too deep into all of this, but I want to show you one little cool thing that you can do here. So there's a node that is called a bitmap, right? So I'm going to grab that quick, and we're going to take the video clip into the bitmap, and we're just going to view the bitmap over here. We'll go to fit, and we're going to change the channel to luminance. And luminance is going to be the brightness values of the red, green, and blue channels, right? And it's going to obviously give you this gray. But what we can do in here is we can kind of get this to be a little smaller, and we can get these like little areas that are like this black, and we can use this information where these cracks are, right? We can use that information to cut the actual, to cut this white, or excuse me, the text. So if I bring this in now, we can see that it looks like it might actually be painted on there, right? Because we got it all cut off, right? And now if I play this through, that's all going to accurately update, and we can see it looks pretty good on there. Now there's a lot of different things that you could do, and you can obviously change this so this isn't so powerful, so we can get more, we can get more of that stuff there. So we can see we have these other little white spots, but the way in which this is lit up, because we can see it lit up from the sun hitting the splashing, and it's kind of reflected here. So we have different brightness levels, but then it looks significantly better than if it was like that, right? It looks like it's starting to be on there a little bit more. Now that you could go really in depth with this. If I wasn't to use the planar tracker, I could come over to tracking, and then I could create a planar transform, which would take the tracking information, put it on a transform, and then they wouldn't be using the planar tracker node to do the overlapping. And then we could add a whole bunch of stuff. Like we could then add, we could take all of this like little information here, and we could do a displacement map and do all sorts of things to make it really look like it was painted on the side. It's a little too much for this tutorial. I feel like this, if it was a very short thing, let's go back over the corner pin. If this was a very short thing, you could make this look good, and then maybe have coming up from the bottom something that that says here. Let's do it in here. Let's just do a number sign. Maybe it's like an episode 21, right? So we could do episode 21, and then we can connect both of these together, right? So we're connecting both of these together, and we have an episode 21. Let's go back into our text, And maybe we make this a little bigger and we could have it come down. And let's have it come all the way to the beginning here. And we'll go all the way down, come over to layout in the center. We'll click, and then we could have it come up. And so we're adding keyframes there, right? This is the little keyframe button. So what happens here is as it plays, it'll come up. And then if you really wanted to get fancy, you could come over into the spline and you could hit F and you could ease this, right? So it'll go really fast and then it'll slow down as it goes up. So we could do that. And now we have both of these as an element together. You could have this go into the planar tracker and we could have it come up from the bottom saying like it's episode 21. All of that information is tracked together. You might not like that if we look here as it comes down, it's kind of like a real rough edge. Might not like that. So what we could do is we could add on here a mask and we could soften that edge there. Let's actually bring it up a little bit, soften that edge there. So it kind of comes out from that corner there. So there we are. But I want to show you the power and the flexibility. And when you come up with things on the fly, you can just start to create them once you have an idea of the nodes. And it really is a time thing. You know, the more you mess with this stuff, you get a better understanding of what nodes exist, how they work together. You can start to create things. But it's a free piece of software that is extremely powerful. If you have the free version, all the stuff that I've done so far is possible. If you have the studio version, you can do even more. But yeah, just wanted to, kind of show you. So now we have that coming up from the side there. So episode 21. Oh, I want to change this, the position. So I come back to the keyframe right here, have the text, select it, and I can bring it up there, right? So now we know episode 21 with the easing to slow it down. And there we go. Now we have everything pretty much finished in this planar tracker. We just need to connect this to the media out. Media out is going to take this project from DaVinci Resolve and now put it back onto the timeline. And so if we come back over to the edit page, we can now see it here in the timeline, right? And depending on how your system's set up, you should have, if you ever have a Fusion comp, you should have render cache enabled. So we come up here to playback and we have render cache and we have it just turned on. And then once we have it turned on, we have this bar that goes from red to blue. And what it's doing is all of the processing that had to be done for this clip, it's rendering it out into a video behind the scenes without us having to do anything. So then when we're ready and we want to play this, we can come in and then we can play this video. I'm not sure what is going on with my system right now, but we can play this video. You just have to remember that halfway through this, we didn't continue that tracking. So it looks great right here, but then as the tracking information falls off, then, we obviously would have to go back and fix that. But there you go. We have some text, rendered on the side of a boat. We can always just go back into Fusion. If you're not sure which clip you're on, click right here. We can see which clip we're on. The little stars here saying that there's a Fusion comp connected to that, which means that when you're on the timeline, it's going to grab the video clip, then process it through Fusion, then come back to the timeline and then play it on from the timeline and go into Fusion and so on, or excuse me, the color page and so on. Coming back over to the planar tracker, we could come back right here to the end, flip this back over to tracker, and we continue tracking this, right? And then we would then have the video clip tracked, come back over. Once we manipulate stuff over there, it's going to then want to re-update the cache. So then we could re-update the cache here, and then you could continue going. So that's how I would go into what happened here. Oh, because I flipped this from corner pin. Okay. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys learned something. But yeah, with that being said, I want you all to stay safe. Thank you for watching. My name's JR. Have a good one.